Pat Riley once said, "No rebounds, no rings." So let's see how that plays out.
Ooh, smooth transition. Nico Harrison said 1,000 times that defense wins championships.
In Dallas today, before you flew out there on the Big Bird, MacMahon, you had a little meeting with Nico Harrison and Rick Welts. The floor is yours on how that went down.
Well, I would like to just assure everybody, there's a lot of concern. We did talk those Mavs PR folks out of not letting us record our own audio. That was a big point of contention. So we got to turn that little audio on, do a little transcribing, didn't have to wait for theirs to come out later in the day. Rick Welts wanted to chit-chat about those arena plans next decade. And gosh darn it, if the rest of us didn't want to talk about a trade.
Rick Welts is a Hall of Famer.
I would like to read the first question that was asked in this press conference today.
Okay.
Can I read it?
It was a good question. I don't know.
It was a good question.
You need me to sound it out for you?
No, it was by our colleague, Tim MacMahon. He was asked this question.
You have to read it, because if I did, it might be too close to releasing the audio, which we agreed we wouldn't do.
I just want to read this question for the people at home who wonder about Tim MacMahon's reporting chops. This is the very first question asked at this press conference, or whatever we're calling it.
This is like 15 minutes
intimate gathering.
All kinds of yeeping and yapping by Rick Welts and Nico Harrison.
Okay. Quote, "You've got an outraged fan base. It's been outraged since the day you made the trade. The overwhelming majority opinion of your fan base is they want you fired. How do you respond to that? And why do you believe that Patrick Dumont should not take them up on that advice?" I just would like to say that is a howitzer of an opening question I'm not saying it was an incredible question.
The hell else are you supposed to ask? I mean, let's get to it.
I'm giving you props, buddy. That's an unbelievable way to start this sucker off.
And he was great. He was ducking and dodging and defense wins. Seriously, he said defense wins championships like 8 times. And it got to a point where I said, so the core of your finals team last year with Luka as a centerpiece couldn't continue to contend for titles? He said, I'll say it again. Defense wins championships. And he said, hey, you saw it. You saw that we put a championship caliber team on the court for 2.5 quarters. For 2.5 quarters, brother.
Crazy.
No, I watched a bleepity blappity finals run last year. That was a little bit more convincing than 2.5. I mean, I'm going to cuss. 2.5 quarters.
I mean, here's the thing. We've been
biting my tongue here.
The last time we heard Nico Harrison talk, right, was the day after the trade was made in Cleveland at the little gathering with you and a couple other reporters in Cleveland, right? It's been 2.5 months since then. And all of that time, all the thinking about it, all the ways to try to come up with an explanation for the trade, I'd say it's fairly concerning.
There's no explanation.
There's no explanation.
He made a very clear statement. Regardless of everything that he has seen, regardless of the unfortunate outcome of Kyrie Irving tearing his ACL, regardless of Anthony Davis getting hurt 2.5 quarters into his first game, regardless of
Luka, when he rushed back too soon to try to get the world off of Nico's back, by the way. Go on.
Maybe.
No, maybe.
Regardless of the fact that Luka came back, wept on the bench, and then dropped 45 around fire Nico Harrison chants. Regardless of all that, Nico Harrison said, no regrets. Now,
but no logic.
Why did he have this press conference, Tim MacMahon?
Because Patrick Dumont made him. Because he was supposed to do it 2 weeks ago, and for some reason, he was able to push it back. He was supposed to do it before Luka came back to town.
And why did Patrick Dumont want him to have this press conference?
Because it has been the worst 2.5-month run of PR that I can remember in NBA history. And I got to tell you, it didn't get better today. Nope. How about poor Rick Welts? This dude's a Hall of Famer, but he's there to build the damn arena. He's there to get the arena.
Which I'm sure he will. I'm sure he will get a beautiful arena.
He got
built.
Chase Center done. Like the guy, like All-Star Weekends, Rick Welts, he's trying to put up a little shield for Nico. This man compared trading Luka to when the Warriors traded Monte Ellis and Joe Lacob got booed, to when the Suns traded Steph Marbury. to when the freaking Seattle Sonics, these are all teams he worked for, the Seattle Sonics traded 34-year-old Lenny Wilkins, no-time All-Star Monte Ellis on a team that hadn't been in the playoffs in years, two-time third-team All-NBA Steph Marbury. No, this is a 5-time first-team All-NBA player entering his prime who's fresh off taking your team to the bleeping finals. Unprecedented and incredibly illogical.
Yeah, I mean, look,
and I know what he was trying. Look, I know what Rick Welts was trying to do. I
know what Rick Welts was trying to do too.
It was flimsy, but what he's trying to say is, trust us, is what he's trying to say.
Look, that's all well and good. When you make a move like this, right? If you make a controversial trade like this, you have to have an ability to explain why you did it. And the problem that the Mavericks have had from the moment the trade was made is that everything they've done since then has been as illogical as the trade. From immediately calling and spinning to our guy about why it was done 5 seconds after it was made, clearly knowing they were going to have to do that, all the way up to the bizarre way they handled Luka showing up last week to this press conference today. None of it's made sense from the beginning. There's been no plan from the beginning. There's been no logical through line to it from the beginning. And reading through this transcript today,
dude,
like it's clear sitting there. There's no ability to lay out a logical plan when, again, you could say, oh, well, defense wins championships. Well, as you pointed out, MacMahon, in your story, the Mavericks defense was just fine last year.
They were the number one defense in the league for the last 20 games. And then
wasn't the problem.
In the finals, they couldn't score. By the way, if defense was such a problem, why was your big move of the summer signing Klay Thompson? So also,
that's right.
And now one thing Nico said was his trades generally have not received immediate good reviews, and most of them have worked out. He did succeed with the Kyrie trade, no question about that. The Daniel Gafford trade was a success. The freaking PJ Washington trade was an immediate success.
Well, the Daniel Gafford and PJ Washington trades were successes because Luka Doncic made them successes. Now Luka Doncic is not there.
And by the way, the Grant Williams trade, not so much. But in those 4 deals, you gave up 27, top 2 to Charlotte. 28, swapped to OKC. 29, it's now Houston's unprotected. 30, unprotected swap to the Spurs. I asked Nico about this, and he gave me a, can you repeat that?
This was a great exchange, by the way, when you asked him about this 4 different times.
Because I'm asking him, like, in your own words, you created a 3 to 4 year time frame in building the finals team. The team went to the finals last season. You gave up your first round control in 27, 28, 29, 30. So 3 to 4 years ends, you're out of your first round draft capital. How is that a logical decision? Explain the logic of that for the team's long-term best interest. He said, can you repeat that? So I repeated it and added a little bit more. And he said, I keep saying the same thing, but defense wins championships? Like, and then honestly, the rest of what he said here is ridiculous. He ends up with, it's a bunch of blah, 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 blah. But he ends up with, we're excited about the future of our team. I think once we win, then that will change your mind. Now, Christian Clark with The Athletic asked him a little bit later, hey, when those picks are due, do you envision yourself as a general manager? The man said, I've got 3 years left on my contract. I plan on finishing that. In other words, he ain't going to be holding the bag. This is what happens when you let somebody who's got a very short-term view make long-term decisions. Your franchise gets completely bleeped for the long term. This thing is dark in Dallas, and it's going to get worse. This is going to be potentially a 90s type of disaster of a franchise in Dallas.
Defense wins championships.
Well,
our guy Windy does love to point out defensive rating rankings for teams. So he and Nico clearly aligned.
Well,
and it was damn good for the Mavericks down the stretch last season into the playoffs. Here's the thing.
In all honesty,
I'm just having a little fun.
He should just throw himself and say, well, we have a devastating injury to our franchise point guard.
Well, and he did that. That's the 2.5 quarters thing, championship caliber team for 2.5 quarters, whatever. A 3 to 4 year time frame to get rid of the franchise player who just took you to the finals, entering his prime for a 3 to 4 year time frame when you owe all that draft capital is illogical. It is incredibly nonsensical. Also, this whole thing, he tried again to say, well, we didn't know if Luka was going to sign the Supermax. Like, dude, no, you don't get to do that.
That's not
bull crap. You don't
obviously Luka
get
was going to sign it. It was a matter of whether they wanted to offer it. But that's
okay. So don't act like you didn't know if Luka was going to commit to you like that. You're not talking to us in good faith. You're playing us like absolute fools. You're playing your fans like fools, dude. Everybody watched Luka ball on the bench. The man was closing on his forever home in Dallas, and he was not going to leave that money on the table. You didn't want Luka long term. You dumped him when, if you wanted to move him, not signing him with the Supermax was incredibly flawed logic. It's been terrible logic. It's been terrible results. It's been terrible PR. It is a terrible long-term situation in Dallas. Talking to a team source tonight, the noise is just too loud. You just can't sustain this. You're taking on water and you can't bail fast enough. Billionaires don't like to admit they're wrong, and this is a big thing to swallow. Patrick Dumont's got to look at this situation and try to figure out how the hell do we clean up this oil spill? Because you know what they did today? They sent Nico and Rick Welts out with brooms. Good luck with that, buddy.
Well, there was one other fairly amazing quote in here that I'm trying to find again, where Nico Harrison, who from day one has made it very clear that he is all in on Kyrie Irving. He might not have been all in on Luka Doncic. He sure as hell has been all in on Kyrie Irving. And as you said, the first thing you pointed out was that the Kyrie Irving trade was seen as a negative trade when he was trying to justify making this trade. I'm trying to find the quote in here where he was talking about.
Point out that Kyrie has the ability to opt out of his contract this summer.
Well, correct.
A whole lot of leverage still. I told you boys that.
What'd you say?
Listen, Nico.
Still got a whole lot of leverage. I don't care. I know. Look, he's probably not playing until late December at the earliest. Could be the All-Star break.
If he's playing by late December, I would like to congratulate him and the doctors because
I said at the earliest.
Well, listen, Nico putting out that statement when he got hurt, essentially saying we're going to have this guy here and it's going to be the greatest thing ever. Pretty much underscored where his belief is.
There's a world where they're a playoff team next year, but they're not. Like, dude, this team ain't winning a championship, and it's a very short window, and then you're completely screwed after that. Honestly, yeah. Dumont completely screwed up by giving Nico no checks, no bounces, all the power in the world. And I asked him, like, why, first of all, Dirk is completely turned off by this franchise. I'll have more on that coming out once they're eliminated. So probably Thursday morning. But like I asked, hey, why not seek Dirk's input? Why not seek Cuban's input? And he basically said, if they're not in the building, they don't know what's going on. Now,
I mean, that's true on its, that's,
well,
on this one, I'll agree with them.
Stay tuned for why Dirk's not in the building. And the reason Cuban's not in the building is because Nico made sure he got his butt kicked out of basketball operations once that sale went through.
Beyond the logic of trading Luka Doncic, all right? He's staked this whole thing, franchise, his reputation, everything, on Anthony Davis, who is entering his 30s and has a litany of injuries across his CV over time. And Kyrie Irving, who also has a litany of injuries across his CV over time and literally just tore his ACL. So that is the foundation on which he is staking the flag that this thing is going to march forward into the future. And I again say
into the 3 years left on his contract. Let's just be clear.
Well, but I'm just going to point out, if you take him at his word, right, and you've got this window, I will again point out, if you're staking things on a 33-year-old dude who's got a torn ACL and Anthony Davis, to me, my expectation for this summer is that the Dallas Mavericks are going to make another big old swing at something. Because if you're not trading Anthony Davis, like I would argue they should, but they're clearly not going to, then you are probably going the other way and you're making another big swing with the limited assets of which they have left.
And I was talking to an executive today and, listen, everybody asks me about Nico's job security all the time. And all I can say is, to this point, Patrick Dumont has given him strong public support. I think this press conference could be considered proof that Patrick Dumont has some significant concerns. Duh. But this executive saying, man, I hope he makes another transaction cycle. It's always good to have a desperate GM out there.
Well, I just hope Kyrie's knee injury was successful, because he had a terrible outcome of his last knee surgery when the hardware got infected, and it ended up causing him all kinds of problems and was really bad. And he was,
and I'm not obviously rooting for the surgery to go badly either. It's the same thing as Daryl Morey on Sunday declaring that Joel Embiid is going to come back 100% next season.
I mean, you hope. And listen, Kyrie's incredibly skilled. Like, the guy's work ethic is phenomenal. Like, hey, you hope. It's a tough thing to base your whole franchise on, though.